Okay, in this video we are looking at two extremes of human interaction. So on one side of the coin we have the capacity to inflict harm, that's aggression, and on the other side we have the capacity for incredible self-sacrifice or prosocial behavior. So just think about you're driving somewhere in the morning and maybe someone cut you off and you felt that just kind of surge of heat, that burst of anger, that's the seed of aggression. But maybe also this morning you saw someone hold the door for a person with a heavy stroller. That would be prosocial behavior. So why do we as humans do both of these things? These two topics are going to untangle the motives behind these two types of behavior and clarify some of the concepts that can often be mixed up. So first I want to talk about aggression and differentiate between a couple types of aggression. This is kind of a common point of confusion, and the difference is, or the key thing to remember is, it's not about the action itself, but it's about the motive for the aggression. Okay, it's not about the type of action itself or the behavior, but it's about the motive or what causes it. Hostile aggression is driven by anger with the intent to cause pain. Okay, so you know you're angry and you want to hurt someone in that anger. For example, maybe someone's at a restaurant and someone spills a drink on them. They get angry and they show them, right? They're going to shove them or start to pick a fight. The goal is the shove itself. They want to hurt that person because they're mad. Instrumental aggression is driven by some kind of goal. So pain might happen, but that's just a tool to accomplish what I'm trying to do. For example, maybe a football player tackles a quarterback in the game. The player isn't necessarily angry at the quarterback. They don't hate the quarterback. They just need the ball, right? Getting the ball, making the tackle, stopping a touchdown. That's the goal. So why are we aggressive? Why do these behaviors emerge? Psychologists have two main theories that are discussed in your text. One is the evolutionary perspective, that people often use, actually men specifically, often use aggression to display dominance and ensure paternity. So it's about protecting their gene pool, okay? The frustration aggression theory, this one's simple. When you're trying to do something, if you're blocked from your goal, you get frustrated. And when you're frustrated, you get aggressive. So think about maybe a time you put some money into a vending machine and that machine ate your dollar. You don't hate that vending machine, but you might shake it or kick it or bang on the glass because your goal to get the snack was blocked. Okay? I also want to mention bullying. So sometimes there's the mistaken assumption that a bully is just a bad kid, but the key thing that differentiates bullying is there has to be some kind of imbalance of power. And there's different kinds of power. So it could be physical, right? A bully could be just bigger, stronger. They have that physical power over their victim. But maybe a bully has social power. Okay, it's the popular kid, one that everybody likes, picking on the one that's a little more nerdy and doesn't have as many friends, isn't as cool, right? So there can be social power imbalances, physical power imbalances, but there's got to be some kind of power differential for it to really fit the definition of bullying. What is maybe additionally interesting, but also tragic, is the bystander effect when bullying occurs. You've probably read about Kitty Genevieve's, and it's a popular story that's told in general psychology books. The myth is that 38 people watched her get murdered and did nothing. So the history of the story is actually a little more complex than that, but the psychological principle still rings true, and that's diffusion of responsibility. Okay, diffusion of responsibility is the concept that if you're the only person that witnesses a car crash, 100% of the responsibility to call 911 is on you. If you're the only person that witnesses it, you bear full responsibility. But if there are 100 people, then you feel only 1% responsible, right? You might assume someone else has already called. So the takeaway is the greater the number of bystanders, the less likely any one person is to help. All right, the final topic in this chapter was prosocial behavior. So let's look at that other side of the coin. Why do humans help? Okay, why do we do the good things that we do? Prosocial behavior is just the way that we describe any voluntary act that's intended to help someone else. Okay, any voluntary act intended to help others. Altruism versus egoism. So this is one of the great debates in psychology. The term altruism is describes helping even when the costs outweigh the benefits. So even if this is going to cost me something and what I get in return isn't as great, that would be altruism. So think about 9/11, first responders running into buildings. What is it that motivates them to do that? Empathy versus altruism hypothesis. So kind of an explanation suggests that if we feel empathy, if we're truly putting ourselves in the shoes of another person and feeling what they feel, then we help for selfless reasons. Okay, so this hypothesis says when we feel empathy and we really put ourselves in someone else's shoes, then it is possible to help for selfless reasons. But I mentioned the big debate is with the skeptic's view, or egoism, okay? That some people argue we only help because it makes us feel good, right? There's this helper's high. If you help someone just to stop feeling guilty, is that really altruism? Right? So that's the big debate. Is pure altruism real, or is there always some kind of self-serving outcome? All right, another one of my favorite topics, or one of the things I think is super interesting, is this last section on forming relationships. What determines who we help and who we love? Okay, what determines who we help and who we love? Why do we like who we like? There's actually two explanations, two factors that are pretty powerful, but are actually going to seem kind of boring. The first one is just proximity. Okay, so research tells us you are most likely to date or befriend the person who lives in the dorm room next to you or who lives in close proximity to you. Frequent contact increases liking. Okay, so proximity, it's just you're more likely to be close to the people that you see often. The second boring but true factor is similarity, or homophily is another word for that. What research tells us is that opposites do not actually attract. We tend to like people who share our background, our values, and even the same level of attractiveness. Okay, this is what we call the matching hypothesis. We feel more comfortable, back to the idea of similarity, we feel more comfortable when the costs of disagreement are low. Okay, and then that matching hypothesis is the idea that we tend to pick partners that we view as our equals in both physical attractiveness and social desirability. All right, Sternberg has a really interesting theory about love relationships. Okay, this part is always a student favorite. Love isn't just one thing. Sternberg says it's a mix of three ingredients. It includes intimacy, which is like the sharing of secrets, okay, sharing of details. Passion is that physical spark in a relationship, and commitment is the in sickness and in health part. If you have passion and intimacy, but no commitment, that's romantic love, okay, right here on the slide. So the way Sternberg, he takes those three different components, and they're at the 3 points of our triangle here. Remember, this is called the triangular theory of love. You have intimacy, passion, and commitment. And you can have different combinations of those. So if we have passion and intimacy, he says that is romantic love. And let's just kind of work our way around the triangle here. If you have passion by itself, but there's no intimacy, no commitment, that would be called infatuation. If we have passion with commitment, that's this idea of fatuous love. All right, if we have commitment but without any passion or intimacy, Sternberg called that empty love. All right, companionate love is the combination of intimacy and commitment. And then intimacy without any passion or commitment, Sternberg would call liking. All right, and then in the middle, when we have combined all three ingredients, that would be consummate love. Okay, where you have a deep liking for that person because you share details and reveal yourself to them. You have that physical spark in the relationship, passion, and you pair that with, we are in this forever. And that is consummate love, the holy grail of relationships. All right, social exchange theory is an idea that's been used in psychology, family science, sociology, a lot of different theories, but it's the idea of the relationship accountant. How do we decide if we're in a relationship, whether we stay or we leave? And social exchange theory says that we act like naive economists in our relationship. So we're always tallying up benefits and costs. Benefits would be things like fun. Maybe we get a boost in our status because of our relationship. Maybe it brings financial security or emotional support. But our relationships can also cost us things. Maybe we have arguments, negative emotions. It costs us time that we spend with that person, and we have to make compromises on various things. And if benefits outweigh the costs, we stay. But if the bank account goes into the red for too long because the costs are too great, then humans are more likely to leave. It sounds cold, but social exchange theory can actually explain a lot of human behavior. Okay, so to wrap up, aggression can be a tool, remember instrumental, or it can be an outburst, more hostile. We often fail to help because of diffusion of responsibility, not because we're heartless. We often choose our friends or partners based on proximity and similarity. And then we maintain our relationships that are based on a balance of intimacy, passion, and commitment, while always keeping an eye on that social exchange ledger or account. So there you go. Next time you're in a crowd, you see somebody who helps, I want you to remember that bystander effect. Don't wait for somebody else. Break that diffusion of responsibility and you be the one to help. Okay, I hope this helps you in your exam prep. We'll talk soon.